C6 Furina does a funny little thing where she quite literally eliminates all healer requirements. So how could I possibly rank her best healers? Well, that is precisely what I aim to tell you all today. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. Okay, so we need to address the primordial seawater whale in the room first. Why am I making a video on healers for a character who inherently doesn't need them? Please hold on, folks, since this explanation is gonna take a hot minute and might get a little complex. Use the timestamps down below if you don't care about this lengthy explanation, though I do think it's worth the listen. For the uninitiated, C6 Furina's short hair mode has a funny little mechanic where when she does her hydro-infused normal attacks, she heals the whole team by 4% of her max HP, which doesn't sound like much, but you shouldn't forget the crap ton of HP percent she gets from C2 plus onwards and the amount that she naturally builds. Also how her 7 hydro hits are in quick succession. Even with her 3 little guys out, she trounces the chance for them to even think about HP draining. But isn't it bad for Fanfare to never lose HP? Yes, and that's where my point is about to come in. Yes, you can always play with short hair mode for a comfier playstyle, but if you want to max out Furina's Fanfare as fast as possible in a longer, extended rotation in an abyss with multiple waves, in fact this current abyss is a perfect case in point, you do your setup, burst, skill in long hair mode, do your hydro hits, then swap to short hair mode until her skill is ready to cast again, so you can reactivate her infusion and thusly repeat the cycle. What not a lot of people mention is how C6 Furina's long hair mode, which is the nuclear damage mode giving her a crap ton more HP scaling, drains 1% of HP every time Furina does one attack. So everyone loses 7% HP overall, and isn't constantly recovering health during Furina's damage phase, which they would be during her short hair mode due to the massive overheal. And by switching to the short hair mode during the time in which Furina's normals are down, her 3 little guys will be draining HP from attacking the next enemies that appear. Use techniques like using Xianyun skill to travel across the Abyss Arena faster if necessary, though that depends on your C6 team. That way, Furina is constantly draining HP from everyone while dealing the most damage possible in a multi-wave setup. And your healer, as even though Furina doesn't need healers at C6, she can use them much more effectively. Their heals will matter more, and how quickly they can frontload Furina's Fanfare will be an invaluable asset to nuking enemy waves in an instant. C6 Furina's own HP changing does allow her to build her own Fanfare as well, so this is the most effective way possible to go about it. Yes, long hair mode does have a tall guy which can heal you, but the C6 HP drain is faster, and that guy is also single character. Also, I'm assuming 100% burst uptime in these scenarios because of C4 and how C6 Furina catches plenty of particles when on field. I'd like to specify that this is mostly useful for multi-wave, which is extremely prevalent in the non-boss chambers of this abyss, because when you're facing off against a boss, there is a technique to get some Fanfare frontload at the start of the rotation. It's a little bit silly and damage per screenshot-esque, I'll get onto that soon. So while yes, C6 Furina can very much be her own healer and max out her own Fanfare fairly comfortably, there is a situation in which you can cause deliberate synergy between Furina and her team's healers outside of the other benefits they provide. Speaking of which, healers are never just healers, at least the good ones aren't like that. They always provide something more. Elemental application, plunging, viridescent venerer shred, instructors, song of days past, weapon-based buffs, attack speed, the works. I value, what do they provide C6 Furina outside of just healing? Does their healing synergize well with Fanfare? Does it frontload? How good is their own best-in-slot C6 Furina team? Do they fit well into Furina's definitive best-in-slot C6 team? Keyword here is well, as always. How well do they complement C6 Furina's nature as a DPS, and are they hard to set up comfortably in a C6 Furina rotation? I'm also going to talk about the constellations of the 5-star supports, but I'm not going to factor in anything beyond C2. Rankings for these healers will stay consistently the same, whether they are C0, C1, or C2, as their placement was made with all factors taken into consideration. Also, apologies if this disappoints anybody, but I'm only gonna be covering the following characters: Xianyun, Bennett, Jean, Baizhu, Kokomi, Sayu, Barbara, and Sigewinne. This is because the likes of Chi-Chi, Mika, Noelle, Diona, Yao Yao, Dori, Chevrus, Kukishinobu, Charlotte, and C6 Goro have nothing to provide a C6 DPS Furina that the others can't already do better. At best, there's C6 Diona's EM buff, otherwise simply only being a healer isn't enough to be valuable once your Furina is C6. Having some kit buffing is a borderline must. This will also allow me to cover the better C6 Furina healers more in depth. And while characters like Kuki Shinobu are great Hyperbloom triggers in something like a team with Alhaitham, which Furina can be a part of, she isn't a DPS there. I want to focus on healers which support C6 Furina's main playstyle of being a dedicated main DPS. If you want to know how good healers are with Furina's regular, more supportive playstyle, I've already made a video on that which you can go and check out. And as always, time for my rankings disclaimer. Take these rankings with a grain of salt, because tier listing is an awkward metric, because there's so many variables at play, and different situations can favor a normally bad character to be really good, and vice versa. This video is more focused on the rough analysis of the characters and drawing out the full value of C6 Furina's best healer synergies with a rough estimate of their rankings on top. Enough yapping, let's finally get on to what you came here for. First, I want to start with my personal favorite C6 Furina healer and C6 Furina teammate on the whole, Xianyun. She provides C6 Furina a crap ton of things outside of only healing. She enables a plunge playstyle for her, which is stronger than Furina's regular normals, and she buffs up plunges as well, making them even stronger. Xianyun C2 only continues to accentuate this, making her a peak C6 Furina teammate. Also, she can hold 4-piece Song of Days Past with another 4-piece Viridescent Venerer holder in the team, allowing for buffing variety, and her signature provides team-wide buffs as well. Her healing is in the perfect sweet spot, where it is front-loaded enough to give a blast of Fanfare after your first HP drain cycle, while having a 2.5 seconds per heal tick, which is just slow and meaty enough to keep the gang healthy while not being too overkill. Xianyun is also a part of C6 Furina's best-in-slot team overall. Furina, Bennett, Xianyun, and Kazuha. She is a core component to her. She complements Furina's nature as a C6 DPS wonderfully, with a huge catalog of buffs and great vertical investment available. Assuming you're using Xianyun on Song of Days Past, she's very easy to set up and doesn't interfere awkwardly with C6 Furina rotations. Top of S tier, literally no questions asked, peak C6 Furina support that I recommend to all of my fellow C6 Furina mains. Time for the Pyroarchon of history, Murata who? So, Bennett provides C6 Furina with a lot more alternate qualities than you'd expect. The main deal with him is the Sunfire he enables with his Pyro Circle. I know Xiangling exists, but this video is focusing on healers. You plop down Bennett and then either get consistent Sunfire action by swirling with Jean on top, or Kazuha's Burst. Also, he can hold 4-piece Instructors, which is a godsend for C6 Furina Vaporize teams, which happen to be her strongest. Also, while C6 Furina is primarily HP scaling, she has such a crap ton of HP scaling from all her talent in the C6 itself that Bennett's attack buffing ends up not being too bad by nature of balancing out diminishing returns, so he's an equalizer in that sense. His healing is single character, but that's fine because Furina's the only real damage dealer in the team. Also, his heals are super fast, and his beyond 70% heal stopping point is actually super nice to prevent overcapping on heals, so that C6 Furina's Fanfare has some adequate room to breathe. He fits into all of C6 Furina's best-in-slot teams, and is a core component of her Vaporize comps. One of the most comfortable Furina team options available just on the whole, not only as a healer. Bennett complements C6 Furina very well, as most C6s get overridden by Bennett, such as Ayaka's and Chiori's normal attacks. Furina's do not, thankfully, and his field time setup is very short, making him feel very solid. His main flaw is Circle Impact, which is pretty annoying in multi-wave. He's got a pretty simple setup, the main thing that matters is getting his burst swirled by either Jean or Kazuha. Still, all of his qualities for sure make him S tier, behind Xianyun. Now for Jean. Consistent 4-piece Viridescent Venerer applicator who can cause the Sunfire effect, which makes her an extremely comfortable pyro applicator when played with Bennett in the same team. C2 can provide niche minimal movement speed, and she can also hold Freedom Sworn. Remember when I said there's a weird technique where you could front-load Fanfare against a boss in a non-multi-wave scenario? Alright, so I don't love this tech since it's a bit reset heavy, but if you make sure to finish the previous Abyss Chamber with a lower amount of HP on everyone deliberately, once you start the boss run, Jean's Burst can front-load a crap ton of Fanfare for your entire team. Other than that, her front-load is usually a bit too strong for C6 Furina for my taste. But Her consistent heal ticks are tuned to be just right in terms of speed and velocity. She can really comfortably fit into C6 Furina Vape. She can deal in Kokomi-less Furina Monohydro 2, aka C6 Furina, Yelan, Xingqiu, and Jin. As for Vape, you stick her in with the Furina Bennett core paired with Xianyun preferably, so that Jin can take care of 4-piece VV, and Xianyun can use SODP for more buffing variety. Or put her on 4 Noblesse for minor buffing, with Kazuha taking care of 4-piece Viridescent Venerer. She synergizes perfectly fine with C6 Furina, and her burst cost is at a solid 64 considering her A1, making her abilities very on demand. Yeah, circle impact indeed, but at least for some really solid synergy with Bennett. Jin is not hard at all to set up. No huge drawbacks to her other than not providing the damage bonus and grouping that Kazuha does, but as a healer she gets the job done super well, but the fact that Xianyun does do what she does but better is a little rough. However, do consider that those two can be used together because you can justify dropping Kazuha for Sunfire. Top of A tier. Baizhu is one of C0 to 5 Furina's top tier healers and is absolutely fantastic for her. But at C6, the problem is that outside of healing, Baizhu provides plenty of Dendro-based buffs and utilities, Dendro reaction buffing, and being a potential Deep Wood holder, or Ocean Hued Clam holder if that's your style. Furina at C6 simply doesn't need Dendro-related support, and his massive comfy healing isn't needed nearly as much as a C0 to 5 Furina. His Fanfare synergy is very good, but not anything crazy for a C6 Furina that other characters couldn't replace. You have to remember that a lot of these characters all work together. Shoot, one of Furina's best teams is full of healers only, e.g. Mono Healer, C6 Furina, Bennett, Xianyun, Jin. So good Fanfare synergy alone isn't enough to carry. Baiju's best in slot C6 Furina team... It's a little rough. You could argue Burn Vape and a good final slot in Kokomi-less Monohydro. If you're gonna force him into Furina Vape, then you'd be replacing Jin or Xianyun's spot. In my experience, it works fine, but honestly, those two provide C6 Furina with so much more for her that I can't see Baizhu being worth it for Furina. Doesn't fit C6 Furina's playstyle that well either, since Baizhu is more low investment dedicated. His own setup isn't difficult, but he really barely has any good buffs to set up for C6 Furina to begin with. Transformatives for low investment players and multiplicatives for high investment players do not mix. C tier. Not my favorite of the C6 Furina healers, but I wanted to cover him because of how much he falls off compared to the king he is when being paired with a C0 to 5 Furina. Time for the aquatic beast, Kokomi. So she is more of a comfort choice in C6 Furina Monohydro as opposed to being an insane C6 Furina Vape support. Kokomi offers plenty of chill gameplay. When your Furina C6 is down and you're in short hair mode, Kokomi takes the field in the meantime to provide really consistent fanfare. Her main quality isn't in buffing, she doesn't provide much other than Hydro Resonance honestly, which isn't a Kokomi exclusive thing. If I'm being real, her buffing utility is equal to Baiju's, but at least she has a harmonious team with C6 Furina. Song of Days Past is also available to her. Fanfare synergy is very solid from all the way to C0 to 6 with C6 Furina. It's not a crazy kind of synergy or anything, but Kokomi is a great downtime filler if you choose to use the long hair nuke and short hair downtime method. Monohydro is not an insane team comp damage-wise, but holy comfort. I think it's a really chill team to play with nonsensical rotations that I wholeheartedly recommend to people who have Kokomi. Don't pull Kokomi deliberately for it, honestly. But when I can't be bothered to play the game properly, it's a great sloppy team to go for. Kokomi has no place in Furina Vape, so don't try and force her. She complements Furina in the sense that she can fill in for her downtime with just enough field time for her next skill trigger to be available again for the next nuclear rotation, and is great for comp sustenance. In terms of setup, you just use Kokomi's burst and on-field with her while Furina's 3 little guys hop to it as you wait for Furina's next skill pop. Great team for C6 Furina multi-wave and AoE. I recommend the traditional Ocean Hued Clam plus prototype Amber Kokomi build so she can get her burst back super quick. Ocean Hued Clam is more or less because 4-piece Tenacity of the Millilith doesn't do much for C6 Furina. Or run 4-piece Song of Days Past for solid team-wide buffing as well, also a very good option. B tier. Really not a necessity by any means, but she plays super comfortably. Now, I'm including Sayu because she is essentially Jean 2.0. She can VV Shred and essentially replace Jean, but also not in a sense. This is because Jean can Sunfire, but Sayu cannot, so she loses out on one of Jean's best qualities in a C6 Furina team. Her healing is basically on par with Jean's, with her burst blast healing being worse. Her consistent healing is better than Jean's if she's swirling, because her A1 allows Sayu to heal based on her EM when she swirls, so consider her Fanfare synergy equal to Jean's, if not at least very close to being on par. Her best team would still be C6 Furina Vape, but honestly man, just run Kazuha Xianyun at that point. Missing out on the consistent pyro application is pretty rough, not gonna lie. Sayu's just very simple. It's not that she complements C6 Furina in any particular way, other than being a healing VV shredding option, which happens to synergize with the C6 better than most of her budget healers due to her element. Setup is the same as Jean's, nothing too complicated, B tier. 4VV is valuable, and she does do great work as a 4-star. Not having Sunfire properties absolutely knocks her down a tier though. Some of you may be confused as to why I'm even mentioning Barbara. Simple, another mono hydro unit in the same vein as Kokomi or Sigewinne, but free-to-play edition. Provides 15% hydro damage bonus to the active character, which is neat for Furina Mono Hydro and Furina Nuke showcases. Think in the same vein as Child Barbara Nuke showcases. She can also effectively use Song of Days Past if healing on field. And for those who didn't know, yes, she can heal on field, with her normal and charged attacks while her skill is active. So she can keep up fine with Fanfare, though not as comfortably as somebody like Kokomi. I've already went over my opinions on Mono Hydro. Barbara deals in it just fine, and the team doesn't lose an extreme amount of quality with her. She can fit into Vape as an awkward final slot if you want the Hydro bonus percent, but then you have to use Kazuha or Jean over Xianyun so you can maintain strong pyro application on your enemies. Double Animo usually helps very well with that. Barbara fits with C6 Furina just fine. It really is for the same field time distribution reasons as Kokomi. Top of C tier, pretty much a free, surprisingly solid Kokomi downgrade, even all the way up at C6 with your Furina. Sigewinne, yippee! To be honest, she mostly plays like a second Kokomi and has similar qualities to her, except her damage is front-loaded into 2.5 seconds of burst time. Well, you only deal damage if you have an R1 Sigewinne. Her A1 buffs Furina's 3 little guys while they're off-field, which is honestly excellent multi-wave utility for the team, and her C2 has 35% Hydro Res Shred, which is insane for Mono Hydro. Kokomi's C1 to 2 are hot garbage, not only in comparison, but just in general. Also, Sigewinne with R1 can deal a respectable amount of damage for a healer, not much, but still something decent considering her primary role, and she can also use Song of Days Past, which is cool. Yeah, her heals are pretty great with Fanfare since she was designed around it. It perhaps is a little too overkill per tick, but it's nothing too egregious. Decent C6 Fanfare synergy here, and Sigewinne Mono Hydro does remove Kokomi's comfortable on-fielding in exchange for more damage with how she buffs Furina's 3 little guys. This in of itself is fine, since during Furina's downtime, you can just on-field Yolan so she claims her own ramping damage bonus. It's also worth mentioning how Sigewinne's short damage blast fits within Yolan's burst downtime, so the rotation here isn't that bad. A bit less nonsense than Kokomi's variant, since you need to time Yolan and Sigewinne well, but it's really not that much more taxing and is also optimized for damage. Sigewinne sadly has no real comfortable place in Furina Vape. The dual Animo combo, no matter which one you go for, is simply too good to replace one of them for Sigewinne. She is mostly just an upgrade to Kokomi and C6 Furina Mono Hydro, which is nicer than C0 to 5 where I consider her a side grade to Kokomi, because the fishes on fielding is a lot more relevant at lower cons. Also, at C2, Sigewinne starts feeling much more properly competent. She complements Furina very well considering parts of Sigewinne's kit were designed around Furina's synergy and never hogs field time off of her in an unwanted way, which causes issues team synergistically. Mono Hydro is a nonsense team anyways in terms of rotations, and while you do want to structure Sigewinne Mono Hydro rotations more firmly after the first rotation, it isn't anything that requires significant brain usage, so not too hard to set up. Top of B tier, but you could argue for bottom of A with C2 factored in. I'm deciding to keep her in B because C6 Vape is just astronomically stronger than C6 Mono Hydro. It's not even close, so not fitting into Vape hurts her final ranking placement. I'm aware that this video is somewhat late, as I promised my C6 Furina healer rankings earlier when I made my video, valuing her C0 to 5 healers, so I'm sorry that this took such a hot minute, but it's finally here, and I hope I managed to deliver something unique and interesting to you guys once more. Sadly, Furina's banner ends in a little over a week as of posting, which breaks my heart, but all good things must eventually come to an end. I mean, shoot, think about it like Christmas. If Christmas was every single day, would it be nearly as special? If you guys have any further Furina questions in general, pop them down below in the comments and I'll happily answer them all. Shoot, it doesn't even have to be Furina's banner in order for me to answer your Furina questions. Join my Discord linked in the pinned comments and description where you can reach out to me in my community, so we can talk everything Furina all year long. Hopefully this video was able to help you decide who C6 Furina's best healer is. This has been Juice, signing out, and to be honest, it's not like you need any sustenance anyways. The enemies die in like 1 to 2 hits already.